I went in loving the concept of higher education. I came out hating the concept of higher education for university. I thought it was the biggest waste of time and money.
I also love the fact that every time a new challenge, opportunity, question lands in your lap, the answer for you is always, oh, I'll build a business around that. Hey, friends, I'm Dennis Geelen, author of The Accidental Solopreneur. Welcome to the Happy Accidents podcast, where we dive into real stories of unexpected success, from chance encounters in everyday life to the serendipitous moments that shaped thriving businesses. Each episode uncovers surprising events that anyone can learn from. Let's jump into today's adventure. Okay, today on the podcast, we have JG Francoeur, short for Jean-Guy. This guy is interesting. He is a serial entrepreneur, a best-selling author of the book Messy Manager. He's the current CEO and co-founder of Visture Property Group. That's a real estate company that manages over $80 million in real estate. But that's not why he's on the podcast today. We're going to dig into all this stuff, but he's here on Happy Accidents today because he's got some pretty cool twists to his journey where serendipity has played a role. JG, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Dennis. I'm looking forward to this. I think it's gonna be a lot of good fun, and it's probably some stories I'm going to share that probably never shared before. So I'm excited for it.
There you go. Hot off the press. We like those. We like those. So before we jump in, let's take a little bit of your background first, kind of leading up to where you are today. Have you always been an entrepreneur? Like, did you know right from the get-go this is the path I was going to take?
In retrospect, I think there was definitely, there's always been kind of hints of my entrepreneurialism. Like when I was a kid, really young, I used to fix up my friends' bikes in my dad's garage and I would charge them a few bucks. And, I always seemed to have a little, I used to sell, gosh, again, another story I've never told before, but we went to a boat race. God, I must have been 8 or 9 years old, maybe 10, not even. No, I'm probably 8 or 9. We went to a boat race in Quebec somewhere, a regatta, where they had these fast boats. And actually, I went to the popcorn guy and I said, "I'll tell you what. How about I sell this popcorn and I make a commission on what I sell?" So I was selling popcorn at 8 years old at this
Love it.
race, and I'll remember that like I remember that like forever. I ended up making some money that day, and it was great. It gave me something to do, and it was fantastic. So I think that myself, did I always know? No, I didn't always know. If you ask my dad, did he always know? He'd probably say there was definitely some hints towards it the whole time, and I've always had that. But I've definitely always been driven. I've always been an early riser. I've always been driven to go to the next level, and I think those are entrepreneurial traits that you don't, yes, you can develop them over the years, but some people kind of, have that from an early age, and I definitely did.
Yeah. So was your dad an entrepreneur?
No, my dad has a very Jack Welch kind of story. He started out as a laborer in a mine and he worked at the same place for 33 or 34 years. And he ended up becoming the CEO of that company. He literally started at the bottom and ended up running the
Wow.
entire division, the entire company. So he's got that very corporate story. Now, that being said, he had a lot of entrepreneurial tendencies as well, though. He had a lot of side hustles, back then they didn't call them side hustles, but he had a lot of side hustles. He had tried a couple of small businesses, and he did run a tax consulting business, one of that side hustles his entire life. He's been doing that for, gosh, 55 years now. So my dad, again, he had entrepreneurial tendencies, but he would have never classified himself as an entrepreneur for sure.
Right.
Now, funny enough, is my dad and I do business together, and he is an entrepreneur today. But I don't think he would classify himself that way from the get-go.
Yeah. Yeah, you wonder if he could start over and do it again now. Would he have taken the same path or would he have kind of taken more of that entrepreneurial path? I mean, we'll never know, but
Gosh.
obviously his drive and his entrepreneurial sense rubbed off on you. So, what was your first real entrepreneurial venture? Like after you're done school and you're like, okay, I think I'm going to start my own business. How did that unfold?
So my wife and my wife's a registered massage therapist, so she's a health professional. And when I was in university, So I went to college in Sault Ste. Marie. I loved my college days. College was amazing, taught me a lot. That's really where I fell in love with business, was in college. And then when I went to university, I really became kind of disenfranchised with the whole university system. And I started, I went in loving the concept of higher education. I came out hating the concept of higher education for university. I thought it was the biggest waste of time and money. It got me severely in debt. And in that process, I started doing consulting. I started doing stuff on my own, and my wife and I started our first business called Corporate Massage Therapy, and we did corporate massage therapy programs, corporate health and wellness programs. And gosh, Dennis, I was like, I think I was probably 20 years old. My wife was 24. She's 4 years older than me. I like older women. So that's a side story, but anyways, and we had our first business, and we had clients. I was still in university at that time, and we had clients in Ottawa, Montreal, Toronto. We had Reebok, TD, RBC, uh, BMO, the government of Canada. We had all these big corporations as our clients. So our first foray into business, we grew relatively quickly. Within a 6 months period, we went from like zero to 3,000 clients, and that was really the first real business, so to speak, where I had employees, we had a team, and we were doing the very best we could, and we were very young, so we were trying, we were figuring it out as we went. But that was the beginning. So I was 20 years old essentially. That
Wow.
was my first real business.
Wow. So at 20, you're pretty much jumping in with both feet. Hey, I'm going to start this business with my wife. Together, we're going to do this. We're going to get these big brands on board. We're going to hire employees. Like that is a lot to take on for two people in their young 20s. Did you ever feel like, oh boy, we got some imposter syndrome here going on? Or was it more, no, we're in this for the ride and we're loving it?
No, every single day. It was tough. It was difficult. I wouldn't trade it for the world, of course. And I had to lean so heavily, Dennis, on, those that came before me, the mentors that taught me, the mentors that frankly didn't even know they were teaching me the books I was reading, and so on and so forth. And I was just like, I remember all of them saying, listen, I know it's tough right now, but it's going to be worth it one day. And I had to lean on that. I had to believe that. Otherwise, I would have quit 1,000 times by now. And I'm really thankful today I did lean on that. But it was very difficult. And imposter syndrome definitely was a thing for sure. And it was a time. It's different today. I know I feel so old saying that, but this was almost 20. This was 2000. So this is 20 years now. And back then, the concept of entrepreneurialism wasn't nearly what it is today. Entrepreneurs weren't celebrated. Everyone was expected to go to school, get a job. I lived in Ottawa, Dennis, and and everyone there, their entire life's mission is to work for the government, which just drove me right up the wall. I hated the idea of working for the government. I wanted to be passionate, and I wanted to be in love with what I did, and I wanted to make a difference, and I wanted to be successful, not just be comfortable. And so yeah, it was very difficult, but I wouldn't trade it for the world today.
Yeah. Boy, you can kind of see the stars aligning here for you. Your dad, who has these kind of entrepreneurial tendencies, some side hustles. So you're getting, that exposure. Your first foray into higher education really turned you off. Boy, like you said, big waste of time, big waste of money. Being from Ottawa, expected to kind of be this corporate person, uh, turn off. Working for the government, that's a turn off. You could see everything kind of pushing you in this entrepreneurial direction. Here you are, you and your wife obviously on the same page with let's do this, but as you quickly found out, boy, this is tough. This is not easy. Um, so let's skip ahead a little bit. What happened with that business and what made you decide to start other businesses?
So, interestingly enough, so that business continued to grow and to grow and to grow. We ended up growing it to continue to have all of those corporate clients, but we actually grew into locations as well. We had 5 different locations in Ottawa. And I don't know, Dennis, if you've ever read the book. I see you got a beautiful library back there. I don't know if you've ever read the book called The Blue Ocean Strategy.
course.
It's
Yep.
one of my favorite all-time business books. There's two books that changed the way I thought about business was Good to Great and the Blue Ocean Strategy. And I put those together and I created what was called Blue Ocean Strategy for that business. We grew it. It went very well, but it wasn't a business that was going to take me to my ultimate dreams and aspirations, and we knew that. So we started investing in other businesses. We started investing. We stayed in the health and wellness space, but we invested and we built a business that did health and wellness product distributions. We franchised that across Canada. We had franchises in Montreal. We had franchises in Ottawa, Toronto, Calgary. And then that led us. And after doing that business and corporate massage therapy, and the other company was called Pasnor Group. After doing those two businesses, you know what I found out, Dennis, is that my skill, my true unique nature was that I was actually a really good marketer. More than anything else, is that was the thing that made me successful in those other two businesses. So then I decided, well, let's build a marketing company. If we're good at marketing for ourselves, imagine if we could build a marketing company. And that's what I did. And in 2008, I started, and another, I built a cleaning business too. I forgot to tell you that one. I
I
built and
like.
sold a
Oh, by the
cleaning.
way, I also built this other
Yeah.
business. Yeah.
I know. I built and sold a cleaning business. I built and sold a product distribution company. And then we ended up actually giving the so long story short is by the time we did all that, and I'll get into the marketing story in a second, but when my marketing business started going really, really well, I merged it with a company in Toronto in order to go big and to go bigger, let's say. I knew I was running out of room in Ottawa and I needed to get into the Toronto bigger corporate, not corporate space, but just bigger thinking.
Right.
Ottawa's a big city with a very small town
Mm.
mindset. And I knew that I needed to get out of there. So I took my chance. I merged my company with another company that took me to Toronto. And in that process of doing that, we actually gave the original business back to the employees. And we gave them the business, and we rolled all the clients into the various locations. And they continued to operate, and then they ended up actually getting bought out by a huge physiotherapy business years later. But yeah, that's kind of how that went about. And I figured out relatively early on, oh, I see. My skill is actually that thing where I'm really, really passionate and really, really skilled and I'm in absolute love with is actually marketing. So then I started that marketing agency. And when I went to Toronto, fun fact, something that very few people know, is that company that I merged with actually actually flopped because the company I merged with, I didn't know, but they had some serious financial trouble. And within, oh, what was it? Probably about 6 months of me uprooting my entire life, moving my wife, getting rid of that other business, giving it to the employees, doing all that stuff. After all of that, moving to Toronto in 6 months, scratching, clawing, doing everything we could to get it, keeping it going. It ended up going under. That their business went under, and as a result, it dragged my project along with it, so to speak, or my side of the business. So, but it was actually one of the best things that ever happened to me because, as you know, as they say, once when a door closes, a window opens. One of the partners in that business, uh, the same thing happened to him. So him and I went out on our own in 2009. Yeah, 2009, and started a new marketing agency, him and I in a basement, just the two of us. And we ended up growing that company to 14 different countries, 174 different employees, 2,000 plus clients. And then I exited that business in 2018. So yeah, it was a happy accident. There's a happy accident actually I never
I
even knew
know.
about.
I love that for the fact that it started as a perceived or could be a perceived failure. And a lot of
Mhm.
people would tuck their tail between their legs, go home and say, well, I never should have done that. Nothing good came out of that. That was bad. Woe is me. Look at this. Look at me. Uprooted my family and look where instead it led to you serendipitously meeting a new business partner who both went through something similar, found some synergies, and built something new out of it. I love stories like that because it could easily go the other way. But no, because of your mindset, because of, your entrepreneurial spirit and your love for marketing, you took it in this direction. So
Well,
amazing.
and frankly, Dennis, it's funny you mentioned that because and I actually think about those times a lot nowadays because I'd love to say all of that is true, but I'd love to say it was because of all that. But frankly, I didn't have any choice. Like
Mm,
it was I burnt the boats. Like it was zero or hero. I had no choice but to make it work. So I did.
mm,
And interestingly enough, is success has this way of handcuffing you because as you get more and more and more successful and you acquire more and more and more things and assets and employees and businesses and revenue and so on and so forth, there is definitely a handcuff element to it. And you can't lose that mindset of burning the boats and zero or hero. And I think it was Jeff Bezos who talked about, his day one concept at Amazon. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but I think that's a very phenomenal concept, which is that the day we think we got it made and the day we think it's day two and we're not day one anymore, we're dead. And I think there's a lot of truth to that, actually.
yeah, I love that because I'm sure there's people listening to this right now going, "What do you mean you had no choice? You could have moved back to Ottawa. You could have got a corporate job, a government job for you. That wasn't even an option. That wasn't a choice,
Yeah.
right? My only choice was keep going in this direction." So I love that mindset. So we've already encountered one kind of happy accident, serendipitous story along your journey. Um, Fast forward to today, like we said right off the top, you're the co-founder and CEO of Visture Property Group, managing over $80 million worth of real estate. But this is probably going to be my favorite happy accident story. I don't know the details yet, but I know this was never on your radar. Real estate was something that you actually weren't interested in. In fact, you were maybe even anti real estate. How did this all unfold then?
That's actually very, very accurate. I was anti-real estate. I hated real estate. In fact, in at that time in 2009, when I first started that marketing agency, if you said to me, JG, you should get into real estate, I would have said that's the dumbest idea ever. Because I thought back then that my funds were better used in my businesses. I thought there was a better return of equity, a return of the capital, return on investment if I kept that money in my business. And I really didn't think real estate was a good idea. In fact, for the longest time, I rented. I could have purchased, but I rented for the longest time, and I used to plow that money into other things. Essentially, I plowed it into everything except real estate, which now
What,
in
what
retrospect was really dumb. But
was that?
that's
Was
how it
that a
started.
mindset or a concept that was passed on to you from somebody else? Like, hey, don't do this. Is it something you saw somebody else crash and burn in, or where did this come from?
It, Well, no, that's actually a great question. And it was always it was I guess early on I used to have these business conversations with my dad and with other people, non-real estate related people, and they would always say to me, JG, instead of buying a place, just consider if you took that money, because if you took that money that you're gonna put to invest in the place, put a deposit down, that mortgage money, so on and so forth, if you're going to do that, consider putting that money in the stock market or in a business or into something else and just measure the return on investment. Which one will pan out better? So I did go through that exercise several times. And in my mind, when I would do those calculations, I thought to myself, yeah, real estate probably will return okay, but these things return better. And there was elements that I didn't understand about real estate back then, and I wasn't doing the calculation properly. And because the math I was doing back then was 100% false, and as a result, that's why I justified it in my mind.
Right.
But yeah, that's where it started. I mean, back then I was anti-real estate, and I wasn't scared about saying it either, because that was everyone's dream. Everyone wanted to buy a house and maybe get into real estate and have a second property one day. And I just thought this is definitely not the path. And maybe that's actually part of it too, Dennis, frankly. Now, you're making me reflect on this conversation. Maybe that was part of the issue too, is, as you can see, I've always been a little bit against the grain. I've always had this fundamental belief that if everyone's going left, I'm going right. So, and if everyone's looking right, I should be looking left. And as a result of this, everyone has always wanted to get into real estate, and therefore I've always kind of thought, well, wait a sec, maybe I should give this a second thought. Maybe I don't want to get into real estate until I truly understood real estate, and then I changed my mind. But that's where it started. Yeah, Mr.
Yeah.
Anti-real Estate, I guess I should call myself.
Okay, so now we're all dying to know, how did that change? What was the turning point? What was this twist of fate that made you all of a sudden decide maybe real estate is a good idea? And now here you are, co-founder, CEO of a real estate company. What happened?
So it was actually in it was Christmas time of 2010. And it was, we were just going into the Christmas break. My marketing agency that I had started the year prior, a year or two prior, was finally starting to really get its legs. And I was starting to really do well. We had expanded to Germany. We were starting to get into Europe, and we were starting to do more and more events and more business. And as a result, I was sitting with my business partner, and he said to me, "You know, JG, one of my goals for you this year is to buy a house." And I said to him, "I don't want a house. That's a dumb idea."
Hey there, real quick. Listen, I really hope you're enjoying this episode of the podcast. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, do me a favor and give it a rating and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss an episode. If you're watching on YouTube, hey, give this video a like, send me your thoughts in the comments, and make sure you're subscribed here as well. Okay, back to the show.
So he says to me, "JG, I think you should buy a house this year. I really want you to buy a house this year." That's how he framed it. "I really want you to buy a house this year." And I said to him, "I think that's a dumb idea. I don't want to buy a house. I don't want to own real estate." And he said this to me. He said, "My mentor always told me that you're buying the real estate, whether you're renting or not, whether you're renting it or owning it, you're buying that real estate one way or the other." And just the way it hit me, I'll always remember where I was sitting. I was at my kitchen island, had the laptop on. We were actually doing a Skype call. You remember Skype back then, Dennis? That was the big deal, right? We used to do Skype calls, and we are
Mhm.
doing it. And I got this, and I remember just kind of like it hitting me like a ton of bricks. And luckily, I've been trained to listen to those intuitions. And that's really a training thing. I didn't come out of the chute listening to those intuitions, but I was trained to listen to those. And when it hit me like that, I thought to myself, okay, I got to pay attention to this. And that was the moment that was the seed that was planted that, maybe it's time that I do get into real estate. And maybe my assumptions have been wrong all along. And it just literally opened a crack in the door. It wasn't like the door flew open. It's not like I started questioning everything that minute, but it was just this little chink in the armor of like, wait a second, let's go back and revisit those assumptions. Let's go re-underwrite all of those thoughts and just double check to see if we didn't miss anything. And then I did the work, that was my intuition, and that was great. I listened to it, and then I actually did the work, which was okay. I got some training in real estate. I went diving deep into, I took courses. YouTube was literally not even barely existent back then. So social media was just starting. So like you had to take courses back then. You had to go to meetings. You had to go to events. I mean, you couldn't listen to podcasts. It didn't exist. So I started taking courses and going through the process. And then I realized, oh, wait a sec, all of those assumptions I had were wrong. In fact, not many were accurate. So then I really started thinking about it, and I started asking myself the question, maybe I need to underwrite a new business plan and a new game plan for my plan to financial freedom and include real estate. And I did that. And then as I continued and started and worked through that process, real estate became a bigger and a bigger and a bigger and a bigger part of the game plan. So that's really where it got started.
I love that story for so many different reasons. I'll try and list all the ones that were popping into my mind. One, your mindset was always going against the grain. So very unnatural for you to hear a comment from somebody like that and then change your mind. But you were open to it. And that's the part I love there, because so many people, they get an opinion on something, or this is the way it's always done, and good luck getting them to change your mind. You were open, maybe this was the 10th person that mentioned real estate to you, but at some point you were open and willing to dig in. I also love the fact that every time a new challenge, opportunity, question lands in your lap, the answer for you is always, oh, I'll build a business around that. Right? Like you went from being anti-real estate to, oh, maybe I should look into real estate a little more, to learning about real estate to, hey, I should start a real estate company. I just love how that's the end point for you all the time is I'll just build another company around this.
Yeah, so I think Dennis, you really nailed it. What changed in me was that the the notion that real estate wasn't a good idea then started building momentum. And then I started thinking, oh, wait a second, what if I combined real estate with my great love for business? What if I got into the business of real estate? What does that look like? And then I started playing with that idea and I started, developing that idea. And where we are today at Vistor Property Group uh, is very different from where we started. When we started in 2012, it was just about essentially owning real estate. We had one building and then we bought another building. And I'll tell you where it started, Dennis, is it's very simple. Real estate made sense financially because I had re-underwritten my assumptions. I had learned a ton of things I didn't know. I had, expanded my mind to the possibility of real estate. So real estate become at first was just a financial tool. Like I have these businesses and I had my very successful marketing company, and that marketing company had to, was profitable and I had to do something with that cash flow. So my idea was very simple. It's like, I'm going to take some of that cash flow and I'm going to put it into real estate. And then, that took on more and more and more. We got to a place in 2015, 2016, where we had enough buildings and we asked ourselves, we have to make a decision here. We either have to outsource property management or we have to build ourselves a property management business. Well, Dennis, you guessed it. You knew what the answer would be there, right? So, and
Exactly.
this is actually, how because at that time, my father, we had been business partners in the real estate holding business. And we asked ourselves, should we build this property management business? And at that time, the game plan was actually super simple. The game plan was, okay, me and my dad loved doing business together. He had just retired from his corporate job. And the idea was, listen, if we start this little business on the side called property management, it'll be fun because we'll be able to spend a lot more time together. We'll be able to experience, life together. And instead of me going off building these businesses as a young man and him kind of retiring into the abyss, why don't we combine those two concepts together and build property management business? And that was like 2015, 2016, and then
Love it.
28, and it just continued to grow and change. And, that same kind of fundamental belief of, looking at a blank sheet of paper and re-underwriting our thoughts and our processes that I did in 2010, 2011. I mean, we do that all the time now, and that's just a part of who we are.
Right.
But yeah, it's been quite the journey, that's for sure.
Yeah. So there's another evolution in Visture Property Group where now you also help people with renovations and adding coach houses and kind of helping them become, real estate investors. What does that look like, and how did you end up going with that branch as well?
So where that all started in 2018 when I exited that marketing business, because remember, up until this point, I'm still running this global company. I'm the CEO. I'm literally circling the globe 5 times a year. Like we had offices in 14 different countries, and I was just like I was at 40,000 feet more than I was on the ground. So there was no time to be building this construction, property management, other business when I was doing that job, so to speak. And in 2018, that all changed. I exited that business. That freed up a whole lot more time for me. And then, we sat down at my father and I, Mike, and we said, what does the future look like? And if we're going to go to the next level at Vistra Property Group, what are the things standing in our way? And we knew what was standing in our way, which was, the renovation side of the business, the construction side of the business, and was a huge choke point. It was very difficult to find good trades. It was very difficult to have good building partners. And we knew, okay, if we're going to go to the next level of this particular business called our property holding company, we have to figure out this part of the business called construction. And that's exactly what we started doing in 2018, 2019, 2020. Then COVID hit, things went crazy. And then we worked our way through that, and we just continued to grow and scale and grow and scale and grow and scale. And here we are today now. And I think as I looked at the calendar this morning, I think we have 31 active construction projects on the go right now, with about 24, 25 in the pipeline, ready to start right after. So yeah, it's grown a lot. But it was all with the concept of how do we get to the next level and what's standing in our way. And construction, that problem had to be solved, and now we have new problems that got to be solved, because that's how it works in business. You solve one set of problems, you grow to the next level, and then you figure out, oh, we got these new problems to solve. And if you don't love that game, if you don't love that problem solving game, you're going to end up getting really depressed in business, because you're going to find out, oh, it's nothing but problems. But that's the game you signed up for, was solving problems.
Yeah, I love it. And I love your mindset towards this. And I just love the little threads of your journey. How, I mean, you started off, we take you back to 20 years old, you and your wife starting this business, massage therapy, spa type business. You discover, boy, I really love the strategy and the marketing side of that, right? So, hey, how would I build a marketing business, right? And then, oh, that kind of crashed and burned, but hey, I met this other guy. Let's do something together. And there's always a thread that leads to the next thing. And like, hey, maybe I should look into real estate, or maybe I'll own some real estate. Oh, maybe we should help, renovate real estate, and it just keeps going and going and going. With that said, I'm assuming you have ideas of what the future holds, but based on looking back in history, you really have no idea what that next thread might be, where it could take you.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that, Dennis, and that's why I love your podcast so much, because I actually think my entire career and entrepreneurial journey has just been nothing but a bunch of happy accidents, frankly. And I have a vision for where I want to go, and I have goals for sure. But it's not my job, and I figured this out early on. One of my early mentors said, "JG, your job is to figure out where you want to go and to set that goal. It's not your job to figure out exactly how you're going to get there. That's the universe's job. That's God's job. That's someone else's job. Your job is to figure out where you want to go and exactly where you want to go. How? You don't have to worry about that. It'll happen as you go." And boy, that, let me tell you, there was moments where that was very difficult to believe. But now, 20 plus years later, I see it clear as day, and it's really nothing but a bunch of happy accidents. And I continue now. Now
Yeah.
I go the opposite way now, Dennis. Now I make a lot of space, and I give, quote unquote, the universe or God or whatever you believe in. I give a lot of space for, like, listen, I'm not quite sure how we're going to get there. And if you were in one of my strategy meetings or staff meetings, I tell people all the time, like, listen, guys, here's where we're going. Now, how are we going to get there? I don't really know. I don't have all the answers. I know, and I was telling this to one of my newest team members the other day. I said, there's two things that you'll always get from me, which is the direction and the end point. I know where I'm going to go, and I know the end point, and I know the first step. The rest, I don't know, and I don't really care, frankly, because
Yeah.
after I do the next step, after I do the first step, the next step will illuminate the path. And that's how it's been, and that was taught to me by
Yeah.
my early mentors in 2004, 2005, 2006. And boy, am I glad that I picked up on that, and I still believe that today.
Yeah. And just about every successful entrepreneur I talk to, most will echo that. If you look back to on most successful people, products, companies, you can see a very similar thread, very similar journey. Now, there will be the prideful, egotistical ones that go, "Oh no, I planned this all out. It was all me. It was all my strategy. It was all my hard work." The more humble people, or maybe the more self-aware people, will go, "No, I kind of had an idea of what I wanted, but I never expected that. I never knew I was going to meet this person, and boy, this opportunity I never expected to land in my lap." So it's very counterintuitive, I think, for, somebody studying business. They're being told, while they're getting their MBA, have the perfect business plan and account for all this stuff. I mean, the weatherman can't predict the weather. How are you going to be able to predict what's going to happen in this world economy and your business? And there's just way too many factors involved. So I think people don't want to hear it. But the real truth is, yes, have that end point in mind, and then be open and ready when these opportunities come your way. Right. And
and be prepared to recognize them, Dennis, because
yes,
one thing that I think it was Henry Ford that said, most opportunities are dressed in overalls and they look like work.
yeah,
And a lot of these quote unquote problems that people identify in their businesses and in their life as problems, they're actually opportunities. They just don't look like opportunities in that moment, but they really are. And that
yeah,
was another thing. And that's why, other than having that end goal in mind, you got to have that. Otherwise, you're rudderless. You got to have that end goal. You got to know at least one step, not all the steps, but you need to have one step. And then the third kind of piece of my puzzle that's been there, and I've said it how many times just in this podcast, but I've always had coaches. I've always had mentors. I've always had someone else that's been there before me. I'm not reinventing the wheel here. I'm constantly working with other coaches and other people, business coaches, personal coaches, life coaches, health coaches. I'm working with other people so they can show me the way, because why would I want to spend all my time, effort, energy figuring something out that they've already figured out? I just got to listen to them. So having those coaches in my life has been such a huge part. And I continued, and that has never gone away. And I made a commitment a long time ago to always be committed to having a coach, either a coach or several coaches in my life.
love it. Great advice. We haven't touched on your book, Messy Manager. Do you want to just give a quick overview? Who's the ideal reader for that book, and why should they buy it?
So Messy Manager is really a small business toolbox, frankly, for any small business owner. It doesn't matter what industry you're in, but if you're kind of flailing in the wind, if you feel like you're hitting obstacles and barriers, and you kind of want to have, back to those coaches I was just talking about, if you want to see the path I took, and if you want to learn from the things I've done, then Messy Manager is great, because I've essentially detailed everything I've done in the last 20 years, and all of the various tools and toolboxes. And I give a lot of samples away, and I give a lot of templates and documents. And that's why I call it a toolbox. It's not a book, it's a toolbox. And it's great. And I've sold that book in 14 different countries. It's an international bestseller, but I give it away for free now. It was a couple of years ago I made the decision I was just going to give it away for free. So if people go to messymanager.com, they can get a free copy of the book and enjoy and apply it. It's not about learning. It's not just about learning and reading. It's about applying what you learn and read. So apply it.
Love it. So messymanager.com. We'll put the link in the show notes here as well. Where else can people follow you or connect with you? Are you active on any particular social media platform more than others, or?
Yeah, pretty much active on all of them. Probably, if they search either Visture Property Group, they'll find our business accounts there. If they search my name, JG Francoeur, you'll find me on all the various social media networks. And yeah, definitely on the business side. I mean, right now I'm really, really deep. Even though I own four different businesses, like I own a marketing agency, I own a spa. I own the real estate business, construction business, property management business, so on and so forth. I'm really, really deep into the real estate right now. So I spend a lot of time educating and speaking about real estate, and helping helping the next generation of real estate investors. Because, as I like to say, if someone just has, everyone that is listening to this thinks, oh, but JG, it's easy for you because you have all this real estate now and so on and so forth. But you just need one, two, three pieces of real estate. We say three pieces of real estate gives you financial security. Eight pieces of real estate gives you financial certainty. 17 pieces of real estate gives you financial freedom. But you don't need 17. You just need three. And everyone in their lifetime can achieve three pieces of real estate. And I can show them how. So I do that. It's a big part of what I do. That's a way to give back.
Love it. Love it. So Visture Property Group, another spot to check out, and obviously dig in and see how they can learn a little more from you on their real estate investment journey. Listen, JG, It's been amazing having you here on the podcast today. Absolutely love your story. I love how you are against the grain, but your story lines up with so many other successful entrepreneurs. I see where I want to go. I don't know exactly how I'm going to get there, but I'm going to be open to those opportunities that land in my lap, and I'm going to make the most of them. So thanks again for being a super guest here on the Happy Accidents podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for tuning into the Happy Accidents podcast. I hope you find these stories as intriguing and insightful as I do. But make sure you don't miss an episode. You can subscribe to my Accidental Solopreneur channel on YouTube and watch these episodes in video form, or subscribe to the Happy Accidents podcast on Apple and Spotify for your listening pleasure. Until next time, stay lucky, my friends.